A Hacker's Guide to Changing the World is the book I hope Joshua Corman writes someday soon, so we can all draw inspiration, vigor, and resolve from his principles, values, and his stories. Founder of I Am The Cavalry, a grassroots organization focused on the intersection of digital security, public safety, and human life, Joshua's work is as influential as it is meaningful. He's assembled a group of people who work for long-term, deep changes that we actually need to cope with the issues brought on by our pervasive use of technology. Joshua and his A-team have helped shape cybersecurity legislation both in the US and UK, and they've also enlisted the help of people who don't have a background in cybersecurity, but who do share a powerful mission. The personal experiences that Joshua shares in this conversation are as moving as they are inspiring. They serve both as warning signs and signposts for paths to follow for a life well lived. It's my honor to share this episode with you, and I hope you enjoy it. Today's conversation is so special to me, Joshua, because your work had a huge impact on me almost 10 years ago when I started in cybersecurity, and it's continued to be a part of my mindset and kind of my direction in this space for such a long time. And I feel just so very grateful to be able to talk to you today and to help listeners get to know you and the crucially important work that you're doing. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm really excited to know that there's someone promoting the virtues of empathy in cybersecurity. So I'm probably equally as happy.
Well, since we're all in good spirit, I wanted to ask, when was the last time you were on the receiving end of an empathetic experience or an empathetic gesture?
Oh, wow. I should have been prepared for this. I don't know if it was recent, but the one that just popped in my head to be present in the conversation. A few years back, I have two children with my first marriage, and a few years back, we had a very disruptive declaration that the marriage would be ending. And I had a lot of soul searching to figure out what happened. I felt very shell shocked. I wanted to be a good father, a good husband, good provider, good citizen, and was pursuing that. And, that's a long story, but ultimately it came down to we had lost a pregnancy, and it kind of broke us, and we just never fully recovered. And then 9 years later, just out of the blue, was over. And I was pretty shell shocked and trying to keep the mission going and trying to keep my ability to provide for my family going and trying to make sure my girls would be okay. And I was just in the worst possible place. But I had to come back from a trip in Berlin, hadn't slept, was really hungry. And all I wanted to do was come home and make myself some food and go to sleep. And when I got back, I saw that my cast iron skillet was in the dishwasher and rusty, and that my ex-wife was taking it right before she moved out. And I decided, you know what? I'm angry for the first time in my entire fatherhood here. I don't want to be angry in front of my kids. So I left. I went to go buy myself a cast iron skillet so I could make myself some dinner. And as I'm shopping around this store and the outlets, and I'm being sarcastic to cope with my frustration and my exhaustion and my being overwhelmed, I'm in the store for about 45 minutes. And the woman who runs the store starts being sarcastic back at me. And she goes, "You gonna buy something or not?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I have a lot of things to replace. I'm kind of in the research mode." And out of nowhere, instead of saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry," she kind of figures out what's going on in my life. Instead of saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry," like everyone else might, she's like, she looks like she got a puppy on Christmas morning. She's full of light and energy and beaming and excitement and frenetic happiness. And she's shaking. She's like, "It's gonna get so much better. You're gonna find yourself again, and you lost yourself a little bit at a time, and you're gonna take those pieces back, and you're going to be a better father, and you're going to be a better person, and you deserve to be happy. And now you're going to get that chance. And so this complete stranger took my pain and concern and fear, and almost in an instant, I believed her. And she was speaking from a place of her personal truth, but also there was just a authenticity to her, and that slipped my heart a little bit to say, I am going to be okay. And that, it was a real turning point for me. So I don't know if that you would call that empathy, but I think her ability to match my tone of sarcasm as a coping mechanism. And then once she intuited where I was coming from, she gave me exactly the right, raw, authentic human connection that I needed at a moment I needed it. And it really nudged me on a path where my heart was open to new people, new relationships, new attitudes, and really probably saved me a ton of frustration or bitterness in that transition. So I'm not going to say it's over and easy that quickly, but you never know who you're going to meet in life, at an airport, at a restaurant, buying a cast iron pan. But you never know where people are in their life, and your random kindness or humanness can maybe be a huge difference in their journey. My mom was a part of this cavalry origin story. Her license plate was "Be Kind," which I always thought was a little saccharine sweet. But in hindsight, and the older and wiser we get, the more we understand it doesn't cost a lot to be kind and to be human. And increasingly, people are forgetting how to do it. So it means more, and it's needed more for those willing and able to do that. So I don't know if that answered your question. Maybe it was a longer answer than you wanted, but that's the first one that popped in my mind is sometimes people really, really need a little bit of encouragement or kindness. And I think empathy allows us to spot when someone needs it and to deliver that, whether you know them your whole life or just for 10 minutes.
I appreciate you so much for sharing something so deep that I felt it in my body, and for highlighting with such clarity. You have such a way with words that not only resonate, but they have this echo inside my brain and my soul that I keep with me, even when I'm reading something that you write. And then this story really was so touching, especially because if we look back on all our experiences throughout our life, and especially the ones we have in this community, we who've been in this community for a long time or a shorter time, when we look back, it's those experiences of connection, of support, of having someone's trust, and of being trusted that you're able to do something. Those are pivotal moments in our lives. They define how we work, what we work on, what we choose to do with our energy, with our focus, with our time, how we talk to people, the kind of behaviors we replicate or we copy or we get inspired by. And if we want to nurture this idealism that sits at the core of this community, which is something that I deeply treasure and that I keep coming back to over and over, then it's through behaviors like these, and it's by also talking about them, because you could have kept this to yourself. This is not a kind of story or personal experience that we often hear in this community or in this industry when we look at it from that perspective. So being able to create the space for these kind of conversations is something that I feel very honored to do. And again, thank you for sharing that and for being so personal about your work through all of these years. So I Am The Cavalry is it brings together a group of people who believe so strongly in something that I've stuck out through some very difficult challenges and changes in cybersecurity for over a decade, and you're doing this incredible work that's actually changing things, albeit not at a pace that we all want it to, but it is changing things. So how did your kind of personal experiences tie into I Am The Cavalry, and how did it in turn kind of shape your choices throughout the past decade, I guess, over a decade?
Sure. I mean, I've told this story a few times. Probably the most emotional is this past year, our decade birthday at the B-Sides Las Vegas keynote. So if you want, I'll send you that recording. It's a very polarizing talk, in fact, because I thought I had said some of these origin stories when we first launched 10 years prior, and I went back and watched them, and I didn't. So I kind of felt compelled to maybe reveal a bit more as to how this all started. So there's probably a longer version there, but today's version is I had been researching Anonymous and the rise of hacktivism. I'm a philosopher by training. I kind of ended up in the hacker community by accident. And then when I wasn't paying attention, I guess I became a public policy guy. But I was really concerned about Anonymous as maybe a significant emergent property of the internet and hyperconnectivity and globalism. And I was less concerned with what they were doing and more what might come next. And I was foretelling things like cyber terrorism, which did happen. Junaid Hussain, UK-born honor student from Birmingham, got arrested for hacking Tony Blair's website from Team Poison, and while in jail radicalized, joined ISIS, moved his wife and kid to Raqqa, Syria, and started the cyber caliphate. He was subsequently killed by a drone strike, but I was really, really worried. I tend to be a long-term thinker. Had a lot of imposter syndrome, like most of us do in this space, because we very much celebrate prestige and profit and rock stars, as opposed to, maybe protecting and puzzling. So anyhow, I got the predictions I was making were accurate enough, frequently enough, that I got the right to bring in 5 hackers to Fort Meade, the NSA, to speak with General Alexander and his staff for 2 days on challenge questions about public safety, national security, should there be cyber laws or not. This is before the NIST cybersecurity framework. And after 2 days of trying to convince them, really high impact, high powerful things that some of the best minds in cybersecurity could come up with, really novel new ideas, they couldn't do any of them. And at the airport bar, none of us spoke for a while, and I kind of broke the silence. I said, "Hey guys, the cavalry isn't coming. No one's going to fix this for us." But that was only half the sentiment. What I didn't tell the guys is on night 1, when I went to my car to get my cell phone and go teach at GW, I had a bunch of voicemails from family and friends saying, I'm so sorry, Josh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, what are they all talking about? And eventually I got to my sister, who said, Mom's not just suffering a stroke, she's going to die from brain cancer. So we had to kind of, that emotionally shook me. And we started a hospice program for a few months while she died at a very young age. So we had a lot of time to brace for that. And when the funeral came, backing up a half step, before we put her in hospice for the final stages of end of life, she wanted to go to her church one last time. She was a superintendent of a school. She was very active in her community. She just wanted to say goodbye to her friends. And that too was denied her because it happened to be the Sandy Hook shooting in Connecticut, and the world was kind of shell-shocked and it didn't know what to do and was confused. And she's a teacher, from the school districts, et cetera. So for a couple of hours, her preacher just kept saying over and over, why is there evil in the world? Why is there evil in the world? And I just remember being very frustrated and angry. My 2 little girls were crying because they're afraid to go to school. They're hugging their grandmother because she's dying. She just wants to say goodbye and she can't. I didn't like what her preacher was saying. It just didn't sit well with me. So I didn't like being there. And I didn't like her dying process. But, a couple months later, after she had passed, we went to the same exact place. So in context, I was feeling frustration and anger again. I didn't want to be angry at my mom's funeral. So I sat in the car as long as I possibly could. I listened to a Tool song about him losing his mom. And when I finally walked in, something just kind of popped in my head. And I said, the last time we were here, I was angry. We were all upset. I kept saying, we kept asking, why is there evil in the world? And it didn't sit right with me. And I think I just figured out why. And what I told the whole room in the eulogy was, My mom got to be my 7th grade science teacher before she even had her teaching degree. It was like someone got hurt or sick, so it was a really strange circumstance, but she was an incredible teacher. And one of the many things I learned from her was that darkness is not a thing. It's an absence of light, and cold is not a thing. It's an absence of heat. So maybe it's not just the presence of evil, but the absence of good. And maybe if something's missing in the world, we got to put it there. And as I'm saying this, I asked the room, what's the absence of Marie, my mom's name? And I didn't have an answer to my own question. Neither did they. Her parents are there, her siblings are there, her grandkids are there, her students and teachers are there. And I just let it hang there for a minute. And I just flowed out of me. I said, you know what? We don't get to find out, because now it falls to us to do what she was doing. So then I'm thinking, if the cavalry isn't coming, it falls to us to try to do something. So it's both overwhelming and empowering. And I had a lot of feels. I'm a deeply sensitive person, but I was never an empathetic person. I wouldn't say. But I found in my emotional, I felt shattered and shell-shocked. I think it did two things for me in the grieving process. It made me, it crystallized what does and doesn't matter. So I became much more opinionated about things that really matter. And number two is being hyper conscious of time. She died so young. An average lifespan is not a guaranteed minimum lifespan. So I wanted to treat time as a precious resource. So what I didn't expect to learn came in the grieving process, which is that in my shattered state, I was just too wounded to care about how I sounded. I was just being present and authentic in my emotions and my feelings, in my family and my friends. And what I thought was a weakness that I would wean out of me as I healed, it kind of sort of tricked me and revealed to me, no, this is actually causing the most authentic human connections I've had my whole life. So this isn't a weakness to shed. This was an opportunity to embrace the importance of authentic, candid, but kind human connection. I never wanted to lose it. So before I lost my nerve, I convinced Nick Rococo several months later to do the reveal of the notion of, hey, hackers, if no one's going to help fix us on areas where bits and bytes meet flesh and blood, can we be a voice of reason and a helping hand instead of a pointing finger? Can we focus on future success instead of past failures? Can we meet them where they are, use their love language, identify and buy down risk, find common cause, common purpose? And everyone's like, well, no one's going to listen until people die first. And I said, well, that might be true. And they said, well, why bother? And I said, well, because we want to be safer sooner if we can build the trust and lay the scaffolding and have a head start when that moment comes. So we had no idea if it would work. But even in the first year, what we found is, we had to learn their love language. We had to understand their frame of reference, empathy, and the ability to put yourself in their shoes. No one's telling their own story. All these things took previous stalemates where like a Billy Rios would find a bedside infusion pump flaw and said, you should fix it. And the FDA didn't know how to talk his language and he didn't know how to talk their language. But we somehow created a common cause, common purpose, and got the first recall in history with nobody dying first. Similarly, it's not that we were better or smarter. It's that you needed different superpowers on the superhero team. You needed to form the Avengers to kind of find a way to succeed, not just to be right, but to be effective. And when we had some positive successes from this new novel alien approach from the hacker community, it was a positive feedback loop, and we had encouragement to do more and try more like that. And more people came to the fold that were initially skeptical and said, hey, I haven't been heard in my industry. Is there something I could do to, could you help me talk to these Congress people? So I think we just became really effective translators to intuit who we're speaking to, what they believe, what they want, need, and fear, and then engender reciprocity on that to get to some movement, maybe sooner than we otherwise would have. And it's been wildly successful. I mean, I think part of the keynote was we had been concerned about the criminalization of research with CFA and DMCA, or the attitude that hackers are criminals. If you look now, we've wildly legitimized that with a coalition teammates, we're treasured. Coordinating disclosures are required. We've helped influence and pass 2 U.S. laws, UK law. I think we're pretty close to a 3rd U.S. law. And this isn't because we're well-paid, manipulative lobbyists. It's because we focus on being informational, inspirational. We want to inform, inspire, influence things that the policymakers didn't know, already care about. And by focusing on education and being a helping hand, they see us as an honest broker. We've done things like Hackers on the Hill to create bidirectional empathy for hackers that come to ShmooCon and Hill staffers. We graduated hackers in the White House last year with the newly formed Office of National Cyber Director and the NSC. So I think this crazy experiment of let's take our technical skills and invest in building our puny little empathy muscles into more soft skills, not just empathy, but chief among them is empathy. And maybe you'll get further by working together. So I don't know. That's part of the origin story for today. There's longer and shorter versions, but that was today's version, I guess. But I think we led by example as well, and we gave people a reason to try to build these muscles.
And everything that you're talking about feels it is a much bigger part of today's conversation and cybersecurity and in society in general. But the fact that you were doing this 10 years ago when cybersecurity was not just wildly different, but it was still kind of a shadowy part of society, of technology even. And these conversations were just so far ahead their time that they must have felt really exotic, I guess, like really like nice to have things, but not quite necessary. Why do we need to do this now? You were such a visionary, and your ability to cultivate perseverance, but rooted in a place of positivity. I feel like that is one of the hardest things to do. And like you said, like funnel this fury and this frustration that builds inside of us. Sometimes rightfully so. We are human. We experience the whole range of emotions. But funneling this into something that is positive, it's almost like a healing process. We get to contribute to healing the world one way or another as we heal ourselves and become aware of our own misgivings that obviously contribute to the bigger issues in society. And this is one of the aspects that I find perhaps fascinating. Is too weak of a word to describe this, but this is one of the aspects that makes not just me, but so many people feel drawn to cybersecurity because everything comes together. Technology and our humanity, our biology, our cultural patterns, our history as human beings. It kind of all comes together here in more or less harmonious ways. And now this is visible. I mean, this used to happen, of course, on a smaller scale, but now it's in front of us. It's happening to us and with us. And just having for you to carve that path for people to contribute and to realize that this is something that they're a part of and they can be part of with their skills from where they are with what they have. I feel like that's such a powerful example, like you said. What has it been like? What has your experience been like to work with these super diverse group of people to accomplish these things together? Because influencing laws and testifying to Senate and getting people to pay attention to, again, things that are really specific sometimes is such a humongous challenge in the face of everything else that's happening. What's that experience like for you, and how do you keep doing this with such energy and determination?
Wow, there's a lot of questions wrapped into that.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I'll do my best. The journey has not been consistent. There's been really high highs and really low lows. And I don't know that everyone will want the intensity level that I might answer from my personal experience. Well, one thing is there's a lyric from a song from Everclear called Heart Spark Dollar Sign. It says, we're possessed by a power bigger than the pain, right? So I think one of the things that has kept my gas tank fueled, despite a lot of adversity and, even gatekeeping and attacks from other rockstar cyber people pretty often, pretty viciously, in fact, at times, has been that there's nothing more intoxicating than having an impact and a material, progress, like real tangible wins. And it's not just about winning a game or like a zero sum thing. It's that when you care deeply about something and you can see movement in the direction of fulfilling that concern. A lot of times we can see things the rest of society can't see, but we are almost locked in our own bodies that we can't effectively communicate to them to affect the outcome that we want. And that we know it's not just what we want, it's what they want too. They were less aware of it. So there's a burden and a curse of that knowledge. And when we don't have the skills to do the hard work to win and earn trust and common cause, common purpose, then we get cynical. So part of the answer I want to give is, before the cavalry, we had lost some friends to suicide or substance abuse or mental health issues. And Jack Daniel, myself, a few others, Dr. Stacy Thayer, we became aware of the Maslow burnout inventory, MBI, the Dr. Christina Maslow. And it's a survey not for individuals, but for professions, that measures really three things that contribute to burnout. One is exhaustion. One is cynicism, and one is perceived self-efficacy, like how well do you believe you're doing at your job. And we scored off the charts on all three. In fact, I think we were one of the highest scores on cynicism. And we befriended her eventually. But, what I found was, whether it was designed this way or just instinctual or just accidental, is that a lot of what we were doing, building these empathy muscles, realizing this is a team effort, not a solo effort, that you needed to invest in each other, not compete with each other. They tended to be the cure to cynicism, because it's hard to be cynical when you're being successful. And it's hard to have low self-efficacy when you're succeeding. And it's, you might be exhausted, but you're also heartened and energized by those efforts being proportional to impact. And so that we felt it was part of the antidote to this death spiral of hurt people. It was teamwork made many hands make like work. We had different skills to bring to bear instead of all having the same skills. It was 2 + 2 + 2 = 10 instead of 2 - 2 for competition. There were just a bunch of the things that plagued us. We had a severe lack of diversity in gender and background and discipline. And because we wanted to be successful, we cast as wide a net as possible. Some of our top contributors weren't elite hacksaws. They were nurses. They were policy lawyers. They were junior staffers that most people would turn their nose up to. But we looked for people with, common cause, common purpose, that were willing to work together. And when you had positive results come from that, then you say, who else can we work with? What other skills are we missing? And so those things can be energizing and intoxicating and rewarding as an alternative to doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results, or just sharing memes about failures and staying jaded. But some of this as well is it's not easy to do it for 10 years. We've had Bo pointed out, not everyone has the stamina to do this as intensely or as long as this mission has gone on. So people that were really active early kind of got tired, exhausted, their life changed. Some people came into the middle. So we've had a few people that have been there since basically the beginning, like Jen Ellis or Bo Woods missed the talk, but was recruited within the first hour after missing the talk. And he's been one of the top contributors. Klaus, I think, is the one that connected us. He's been one of our top people in Europe. But so we've had some long-standing leadership figures but it's not easy to do this on top of your day job. And sometimes that means getting on airplanes and doing things that you shouldn't do that, cut into your family time, your personal time, your work time. So, and at least twice I've had to leave my career on hold. Once I went into a public policy think tank, the Atlanta Council, to trying to put cyber safety on the board during a congressional task force on healthcare. And as a reward for my good deeds, I guess, when the pandemic was declared, I got asked to come into emergency federal service and become the chief strategist for CISA's COVID task force. Well, we had to design and implement that to keep hospitals safe and keep vaccine supply chains and other supply chains safe during, the craziness of the pandemic. So, that's not always fun, but, if you're mission driven, then you answer the call when the call comes, even if it's going to be hard. So those have been things that have had a high cost on me in some relationships. It's had a high cost on income and career. And now I feel like I'm broken because I care deeply about the public good. So it's hard to go back to the private sector, but I'm too private sector, optimized to like really live in a big bureaucracy of government. So I kind of don't belong in either world. So that's a little bit isolating. I think a lot of people, when they hit those, they retreat down to what they can control. But I think in the macro sense, you do need some idiots to keep doing these big things for a common cause and the public good, because if you don't, the gap gets bigger and bigger between what we need and what we have. So we're really, really, really proud of the laws we passed and the attitudes we've changed and the frameworks we've promulgated. And the world has gotten a lot more dangerous, a lot faster. So the new question becomes, how do we scale this? It can't be, I Am the Cavalry was never Josh or Bo or Jen. It was meant to be your personal declaration. And at some point, people are like, oh, I'm glad you guys are doing that. It was not supposed to be you guys. It was supposed to be everybody has a role to play. You can make the world safer from wherever you are with whatever skills you have. And at some point, what I realized is you can't cyber our way out of this. Like, I think the next wave of empathy is cyber security or insecurity is an Achilles heel. It's a really dangerous, poorly factored contributor to risk, to societal risk, like hospitals, like water, wastewater, like food supply. But it's not the only one. And our failure thus far, whether it's the cavalry or the cybersecurity industry, is we're really good at knowing our contributing risk in isolation, but we've not really integrated that into broader societal choices. And what I realized when I saw small, medium rural hospitals closing their doors forever, most of that financial insolvency has nothing to do with cybersecurity. But cybersecurity can make it worse and has. So we've seen now hospitals close forever because of ransomware. Now, the ransomware alone wouldn't have done it. But when factored together, you can't cyber your way out of it. They both cannot afford to do cybersecurity. They cannot afford not to. So these are really hard. And some people kind of draw that line and say, well, let's just focus on what we control. Some of us are a little more idiotic and tilt the windmills, and we say, well, what does the world need? Not what's easy to do or what can we do and can control, but like what's required. So I think it's a little bit of a rarefied air to have the stamina and the energy on the long haul to see through some of these things. One of the laws we worked on took about 9 years, start to finish, to pass. That's a long time. My bigger concern, besides the fact that the world got worse faster, is, I don't know if these are the right words, but I noticed that when the pandemic hit, it really traumatized everyone. And no matter how altruistic or outgoing they were, everyone's radius of light or care for others shrunk a little. Emotional armor, fatigue, exhaustion, like people can only give what they can give and do what they can do. But even amongst some of the best contributors and the most civically minded people, I found everyone is a bit diminished. And I don't want to end on a dire note, but I thought of some people 2 or 3 times during this conversation, but some of the strongest empaths, like natural, superpowered empaths I know, are no longer with us. We've lost them to suicide, or they were overcome by their sensitivity. And And I feel their loss often, they were huge contributors to I Am The Cavalry or some of our public safety missions. And I recently got to talk with another strong empath who is taking care of themselves now. And I reminded them that one of the dark sides of being an empath, even if you get professional help and counseling for your sadness or for your being overwhelmed, is that empaths just feel things so much more intensely and strongly that should be a factor in their recovery and in their counseling. Because I think it was Alyssa Miller on one of your recent episodes that said empathy is dual-edged, right? It's a blessing and a curse. It can really give you power to fight harder for something longer and maybe be more successful at having those authentic human connections and successes. But it also means you're more susceptible to feeling the pain of the world, or when it's harder to let go of things just because they're difficult, because you care enough and you can see or feel the pain of others around you. So to that end, approach building these muscles because it'll make you more effective in the world, in your day job, in your family, and be advised that taking a journey to build these muscles means you may feel things more and see things more and care more than you otherwise might have in the past. And that should be factored as well with eyes wide open. I still think it's worth it on balance, but I have, really felt and mourn the loss of some of these really strong empaths that were overcome in one dark moment or just from carrying that weight for so long. So make sure you take care of each other as you learn these muscles, because it's okay to take damage as long as you have healers to build you back up.
I feel like letting out a breath that I've been holding in.
Sorry.
Just because no. This is not to say this. You've opened the conversation to. You've brought so much in the space of this conversation. All of the human experience through its various stages, from our feelings. Like the child within us that stays in one part of our psychology and biology that looks for external help, for external validation, for someone to come to fix certain problems. It looks for the cavalry, and then the adult that acknowledges that that's not going to come, and that we're here for each other with our imperfections and our hopes and dreams and the soul-crushing reality of things that we have to live with simply the best we can. You've really brought this in so with such grace, is what I wanted to say. And honestly, I feel like you've condensed so many life lessons that that's given me a lot to think and a lot to sit with going forward. But this just leads me personally, and I think those listening to have even more appreciation for this kind of difficult work that you're doing now, and for being honest about what it takes to do it, and the toll that it takes, and the fact that sometimes we need to give ourselves breaks and do some kind of different work that's perhaps just a bit easier, and that there's nothing wrong with that. That there's nothing wrong with putting all of these parts in our lives together in a way that makes sense for us at the stage in which we are. And this actually reminds me, some of the things that you mentioned reminded me of something that Javad Malik said in a previous episode, which is the fact that this industry has grown up and matured because the leaders in it have grown up and matured and went through these life-changing experiences of becoming parents, of losing someone, of losing parents, of losing people they love. And all of these experiences carry with them a deep transformation. And that obviously seeps into our work and our decisions, and in turn influences everything else.
I feel compelled to say something else. I know we can't talk forever, although I'd love to. When I gave the keynote at the 10-year birthday of B-Sides Las Vegas, it was unlike a lot of my other talks, it was very much from the heart. I was, teary before I started. I had to kind of fight through some of that. But by virtue of it, I had like 4 or 5 things I wanted to communicate, but I just couldn't figure out how to do it in a polished way. And when I surrendered and just was present and just spoke from the heart, it turns out one of the most important things I said, I didn't even plan to say. And it was that one of the most magical things of the B-sides community is that I think the way they describe it is B-sides is where you go to learn, right? So but I saw it slightly differently. I saw one of the reasons B-sides was born is it was impossible, nearly impossible for new speakers to ever crack into the conference circuit at B-sides, at Black Hat or DEF CON. And we wanted an on-ramp so that new blood can get in the system. You could mentor people. You could invest in the future. So I found that whether it was just me being wounded enough to push through the gatekeeping and the rockstar kind of prestige class, I always saw B-sides as the family, community-oriented, mentoring, investing, nurturing, protectors and puzzlers. And maybe the most important thing the cavalry demonstrated through existence proof is that you don't need permission. You don't need to be famous. You don't need to let people diminish you to make the world better. Like, we defied the gatekeeping, took a lot of abuse for it. I personally took a lot of attacks. I still get some. But by toughing it out, we created another pathway for anyone to contribute, whether you want to be famous or not, whether you want to be rich or not. You can make the world better no matter who you are and where you come from and how new you are. Everyone's got something to contribute. So I think that came through a little bit in my teary delivery, as like this was almost an active protest against gatekeeping and instead towards empowerment and inclusion. And not just for empowerment and inclusion's sake, but because it actually works, right? There's a case to be made outside of just doing these things because they're also the right thing to do. They work better. And I hope we don't lose that, because to your point, as some of our leaders matured and grew up and saw real life, they helped shape and sculpt the industry maturing, but also we're kind of having some of them time out, like ShmooCon's ending next year. And the torchbearer, the attitude and the aesthetic of ShmooCon is so rare and precious between, Heidi's leadership and how much she thanks people and puts care in every choice. Jack Daniels' retirement has been felt from the B-sides global community, and he still gets involved and he still cares, but we won't have them forever. So I want to make sure as some of that maturing guard retires, ages out, we lose them to cancer, we lose them to other factors, that we keep that virtuous cycle going. The next guard is trying to figure out who they are and how to step up and be the torchbearers of the right values and the right ethos and pathos of what we're doing. And if we don't take care to nurture those flames, we might lose some of them. So I think we're at an interesting transition where we've gotten big, we've gotten legitimized, but can we keep the soul and the spirit? And can we start making generational investments in the next generations of contributors? And can we take the lessons that were good and expand them? So we're not just cybersecurity people talking to other cybersecurity people. I think the next 10 years, the cavalry has to have some cyber people, but it also needs systemic risk people and healthcare people and, sociologists, psychologists. I think we've done as much as we can within our sphere. That sphere has to grow. We need to better integrate what we do. So there's more changes necessitated at this new juncture. And we have to be very thoughtful about what's that old Native American legend of there's 2 wolves inside of you. One wants to destroy the world and one, wants to protect it. And the kid says, which one wolf wins, grandfather? And he says, the one that you feed. I think we should feed the right aspects of what got us here and invest in the next wave of lessons. Empathy is core to it. So I'm really, really happy that you're highlighting it and amplifying it in everything you're doing.
I appreciate all of the tools and all of the knowledge that you're putting in the space so that everyone can pick kind of their own path, pick their own adventure in cybersecurity, or starting from cybersecurity, or led by and motivated by cybersecurity ideals and concepts, and the entire like hacker ethos and everything that it stands for. Whatever we take from there's this yoga teacher that says something that stuck with me for so many years, like, take what you need, leave what you don't. Take what you need from cybersecurity to do good in the place that you are, with what you have, with what you know. It's not, you don't have to label yourself as anything, as long as you pick along the way the right inspiration, and fuel that, pick the right food to give to the right wolf inside of
Yes.
you.
Right.
So you can just carry through life with a sense of reward and a sense of connection and a sense of presence, which is something that you've mentioned in this conversation a lot, and it's something that I'm really appreciative for. This conversation has been just honestly not just an honor, but a blessing, and something that I feel should be part of, a book that becomes like a fundamental read in for people who feel this way, for people who need a way to articulate their thoughts and actions in this direction.
We should talk after this recording, because I have a couple ideas. But one of them, for example, is, Bo and I always joke that if we ever wrote a book about cavalry, the working title would be, "We have no idea what we're doing, but it seems to be working." And at B-Sides Las Vegas track last year, we said in the last session, well, we kind of know some things that work now. We tried a lot of stuff. We know what didn't work. So we have considered whether it's a book or a boot camp, like, what is the hacker's guide to changing the world? And one of the skills and the disciplines that we brought to bear from other places, like theory of constraints or empathy or communication skills and structured learning and thinking and rhetoric. And so we may write a book, we may make a boot camp, but one of the ways we think we can scale the cavalry is by having plural cavalries. So whatever you think is missing in the world, can we invest in you and give you the boot camp so you can make fewer mistakes and be, more successful earlier? So an aspect of the next decade is investing in parallel, plural change agents. And boy, would it be nice to have a session on empathy.
I would love to contribute, and I can already see it, like, with my mind's eye. It's sort of a like sci-fi scenario come true, very rooted, very close to the present moment. And The Hacker's Guide to Changing the World, that's a book worth writing, and definitely one worth reading. And I can't wait to see it and like hold it in my hands and treasure it in my library in whatever shape or format it counts.
Well, thank you for today, at least. And I look forward to watching and listening to this develop further.
Thank you, Joshua. This has been just absolutely amazing. I'm very, very grateful. Thanks so much.